Hello, welcome back to CS++. This is the third lesson in our Intro to Programming using JavaScript. Today we're going to look at selection and conditionals, so if-else statements. So what we're going to look at is different ways that we can compare numbers and strings. We're going to look at the difference between triple equals and double equals. Then we'll look at the if statements, the else if statements, and then the else statements as well and how we can chain them together. And then we'll look at some logical operators like and, or, and not. And then we will revisit our parseInt and parseFloat. And then for our assignment, we will start by checking to see if a number either is a number or not. And if it is, if it's positive, negative, or zero. And then we'll do another one where we have a user enter an age and it will determine how much their movie ticket costs. And you can see we're going to use these prices and these ages right here. So let's get started. So again, when we're comparing two things, we are going to get a Boolean value, which is either going to be true or false. So when we start getting into our if statements and then the next unit, our loops, we're going to want to know if something's true or false. So these are a couple of the symbols that you can use to compare two things. Some of these are used just for numbers, but they could also be used for strings. So equals equals equals, we'll check to see if two things are equal and the same type. So you can see down here below, you might have seen equals equals before. If you say 5 equals equals 5, the string, one is a string and one is a number, but they still will be true. If you use triple equals, it will say, are they both 5 and are they the same type? So are they both integers or both strings? So in this case, it will be false. So in this lesson, we're going to use the triple equal sign. You can also use an exclamation point, which is not. So if you do not and then two equal signs, that was a strict not equals. So 5 is not equal equal 3 would be a true statement. And then you also have your less than for numbers, your greater than, less than or equal to. We don't have that symbol on the keyboard, so we have to use a less than and an equal sign next to each other with no space in between. And then the same thing for greater than or equal to. So for the if statement, we started looking at this a little bit last lesson, but an if statement is just going to be the word if followed by a set of braces or a set of parentheses with a Boolean value inside. So something that results in true or false. So here you can see we have temperature as 95 a number. So is that number greater than 90? If it is, then it'll do whatever's inside of these braces. So in this case, it'll say it's hot outside. If it's not true, then it'll just skip this completely. So in the past, what we had was we did every single line of code. So now what we can do is we can go to code and say, well, only do this if a condition is met. You can also connect this with an else statement. So here, the if statement, if that is true, it'll do it. And then you can use the word else, and that will be everything else that wasn't above it. So in this case, we have if age is greater than or equal to 18. It's not in this case, so it skips you can vote, and then it goes automatically to the else statement. You'll also notice that the else doesn't have any parentheses afterwards, right? There's no Boolean logic after an else. It's just a catch-all statement. So you literally just use the word else there and then open up your braces. You can also chain these together. So you can have multiple conditions. If you were to do a bunch of single if statements, then they're all independent of each other. But if you put the word else in front of your if statement, then it will connect it to the most recent if statement. And you can do this as many times as you want. So in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different things. So here we have if score is greater than 90, give them an A. So as soon as something's true, it'll skip all of the other things that start with the word else, either else if or else. So if it's 90, then it says A and it's done. If it's not 90, then we get here, right? So if we get here, then we know that this had to be false. So we know that they didn't have an A. So we don't have to check if it's between an 80 and a 90. We just have to say, is it greater than an 80? If so, it's a B. If that's true, it skips the rest. If not, it checks here. So is score greater than a 70? Again, we know that the only way it could get here is if it wasn't greater than 90 or greater than 80. So it would have to be less than an 80. And then if none of those are true, you can say you failed. And you can continue that chain of else if statements as long as you wanted. You You can also combine these using ands and ors and nots. So if you wanted to say it's between two things, you can say if age is greater than or equal to 13 and age is less than or equal to 17. You'll notice that on both sides of it, you have to have the whole condition. So you have to say age is less than or equal to 17. You could also do or. So if day equals sat or day equals sun, you can say it's the weekend. And you can also flip that around by using just a single exclamation point. So if you have is not a number, which is a method that exists to tell you if a number is not a number or not, you can say not. So this is not a number, so that means this is a number. So you can use that by doing an if statement with is NaN here. So if is NaN, so if it's not a number, then it will say that's not a number. The nice thing about parseInt is if you try to put a string in there or something that doesn't start with a number, then it will turn that into NaN. And that will be true if you put that into is NaN. And then again, we have our parseInt and parsefloat, which will take our string and convert it to a number. So let's dive into this. We are going to do two things. We're going to check to see if a number is a number and if it's positive, negative, or zero. And then we're going to do our little ticketPrice program. So you can go over to your index.html. And again, your dev container automatically installed something that you can click here that will open this in the window here. And then you can open this in a browser. Alerts and prompts don't work inside code spaces, so you want to keep this open. So we can close this one. And we don't need to change anything about the index.html. What you will notice is there will be two buttons, one called checkNumber and ticketPrice, that will call your JavaScript. And those functions, since we haven't learned how to write those yet, are already written for you. So step one, let's do checkNumber. So the first thing we need to do is go grab that number. So we can do let, we'll call it num, equals, and in one step, we can combine steps 1 and 2, and we can do parseInt or parsefloat, and then do a prompt. And then in that prompt, we want to make sure it matches enter a number. No punctuation at the end. And again, if this is not a number, then parsefloat will turn num into NaN for us. So we can go down to step 3. And step 3 says, well, check to see if that is not a number. And if it's not, then we're going to do invalid input. So what we can do is we can do an if statement saying if is NaN, and you'll see that pops up, it is a function, and then num will be the thing that we're looking at. If that is true, then we can alert invalid input, matching the casing correctly and spelling everything correct. And now what we can do is we can use an else statement to get out of this, because we don't want to keep going if it's an invalid input. So we don't want to do another if statement, because if it's not a number, then it would just go down to the next one. So you have two ways to do this. You can just get out of this function. And to get out of this function, you can return early. So that just means return back to where checkNumber was called. And we'll look into this more when we get to the lesson on functions. But to do that, you just say the word return. So if you get to that word, then you're done. You wouldn't see anything else. But if you didn't, then you would continue on into step 4. So step 4 is going to say, is this positive, negative, or 0? So this is just going to be a chained if statement. So if, and it doesn't really matter where you start, but we'll start with a positive number. So if num is greater than 0, then what do we want to do? We want to alert capital positive. And then we want to connect these, so we're going to use an else if. And now we can check to see if it's negative. So if num is less than 0, we can alert negative. And then really there is no other choice here, but we do need to use a triple equal sign somewhere in here to pass the test. So let's do another else if. If num is exactly 0, we can say alert, and then make sure you match the string, which is 0. that should be it. So we can go back over to our open window, refresh it, click check number, type in G, invalid input. Check number again, 0, 0. Check number again, -3, negative. And one more, check number, 4, positive. So that looks like it's working well. So that was a good warm-up. So now let's go into our ticket price function. So we're going to determine a ticket price based on the customer's age. So if they're a child, it's $7, teen $12, adult $20, and a senior $12. So again, step by step, the first thing is we're going to get their age. Probably want to convert that to a number, so we can combine steps 1 and 2 together if we want. So we can do let age equals parseInt, because this is going to be an integer, and then prompt, and then enter your age. So that is steps 1 and 2 together. So we get their age and we convert it into an integer. So if you do parseInt and it's like 5.7 or something, it'll just make it 5. So we can jump down to step 3. Step 3 is check to see if it is invalid. So if it's not a number, or if it's a negative number, because you can't be a negative year old, we're going to say invalid input, and then we're going to exit early like we did earlier. So we can say if is not a number of age, or, so we can use the 2 pipes, which is above your return or enter key, age is less than 0. So those are the 2 conditions we want to say, well, if that's true, then alert invalid input. And then we want to get out of this early because we don't want to continue, so we can say that word return again, which we'll revisit when we get to functions. And step 4 is going to be where we actually check the ticket prices. So if we get to this point, we know that they have an age that is between 0 and infinity, I guess. So all of this is a chained else if statement. So we can start with the lowest one. So if age is less than or equal to 12, right? Because we know it's got to be at least 0 because we just checked to see if it was negative. Then we could do an alert, and we want to make sure it matches child : space $7. And then we can do an else if. And now we know that if the if was true, then they have to be at least 12 years old. So we don't have to say they're between 13 and 17. We can just say age is less than or equal to 17. And if that's the case, then we can say alert teen is $12. And then we can do the same thing again. So if we know we get to the other one, then they have to be at least 18 years old. So we can do another else if, and now say, are they less than or equal to 64? We could have done less than 65 as well, but less than or equal to 64 because they are integers. This is adult : $20. Make sure that's inside quotes. And then the last one, they have to be a senior if they're none of these things because they have to be at least that. So we can do an else statement. An alert senior $12. And let's check that out in our other tab. We can refresh. Ticket price, enter your age. No, invalid input. Click it again, enter your age. -2, invalid input. Ticket price, 68, senior $12. 0 years old, child, $7. So it looks pretty good. So again, once you are done, you can go click on your version control icon over here, give it a commit message. Again, make sure you give it a commit message. And then you can, in one step, commit and push. Or if you wanted to, you could just click commit, and then a word that says sync should pop up. And sync is how you push it to github.com. So again, committing is saving it locally to code spaces. and pushing it is sending it to github.com. So if you do push it, then it'll be in the cloud on github.com forever. Right? If you, for some reason, don't push it and only commit it, if your code space gets deleted or corrupted, then your work is all gone. So you want to push it back to GitHub. And again, when you push, it triggers an action over on github.com. So you can refresh that, and you can click on this little dot or the word actions up here. And you can click details, which would give you a very detailed view of this. Or if you want to click summary, you can click summary. And then you can see that we've passed all of the tests. So that was using selection and logic here and some conditionals with if statements and else if statements. And the next one, we'll start looking at how we can repeat code over and over using loops. So we'll look at iteration, and we'll look at the for loop and the while loop. And I will see you then.